Welcome to another episode of Wicked Hot Guys. This is John.
And Kevin.
And we are also joined by our guest, Peter Marullo. Peter, what's going on?
Hey, guys, what's going on?
What's up, YouTube? Welcome to my YouTube page.
For all the, YouTube bloggers, I hope I didn't offend anybody out
Yeah,
there.
no, definitely not. So, Kevin, as always, we post on the Instagram every week. What do we post? Who got it? What are we doing this week?
So this week we posted a picture of the crew from Goodfellas. And we actually did have a correct guess, and that was Sasha Lene MFK. So
Sweet. Congratulations.
Yeah, she
So
actually got it.
what does Sasha get? What's her reward?
So at the end of the year, we're going to put all the guessers that were correct together and give out some swag.
This week, the format will be a little bit different. We are going over history of organized crime and then jumping into some of our movies, as well as talking about a little bit of tropes, and then closing it off with a question of the day. So get your hair slicked back, and let's get into another episode of Wicked Hot Movie Mayhem.
Wicked smart, wicked cool, wicked fucking stupid, whatever the fuck. Something wicked.
I'm baking like a toasted teaser. It's so hot here.
My boy's wicked smart.
So the boy is hotter than hot. He's hot, hot, hot.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
So Chris Tucker was wrong. LA did not invent gangs. Instead, organized crime in the United States sprouted in the early 1800s in New York. Basically, all gangs of infamy came from New York, and a lot of them specifically came from the Lower East Side of Manhattan and in the 5 Points. Prominent gangs during this year were either formed by Irish immigrants or anti-Irish groups, the most famous being the Bowery Boys and Dead Rabbits. If you're thinking these sound familiar, it's because they are, and they were both featured very prominently in Gangs of New York. And speaking of Gangs of New York, the Federation of American Natives, or the Natives, that are led by Bill the Butcher, was actually based on the Bowery Boys. So I don't know if you remember, but in the movie, the Bowery Boys were a separate gang. But the Natives were based on the Bowery Boys. So they're completely made up, which kind of... I'm not sure why they would mention the Dead Rabbits by name and then the Natives were completely fictionalized. I mean, obviously both were fictionalized, but
maybe they didn't get the rights from the gang from the 1800s.
From the 1800s gang. Maybe the Bowery Boys are still a thing. I don't know.
Out there in the night, in the shadows, in the alleyways.
And the Lower East Side.
Lower East Side.
So the leader of the Bowery Boys, William Poole, also ironically named Bill the Butcher, like Daniel Day-Lewis's character, was founder and leader of that specific nativist group. They were also volunteer firemen, which I don't know if you recall the scene. Firefighters are fighting each other. When the house is burning down, they're like, all right, that house is burned down, on to the next one. So yeah, all of that stuff was pretty accurate. The only thing is the real Bill the Butcher, he's killed in the 1850s rather than during the draft riots, which is how Daniel Day-Lewis's character meets his end.
And what year was that?
I believe it was 1863.
Okay, so he dies before that.
Yeah, it was during like the Civil War.
Okay.
Well, no, the movie was during like the Civil War draft riots. The real character, the real guy, died in 1850s, so probably like 10 or 15 years prior to the events of the movie.
I see.
So from there, between the late 1800s and the explosion of crime in the 20s, there was one pivotal gang that was founded and created, the seed for all major players in the Italian mafia. So the gang is the 5 Points gang. Conveniently, basically all crime, it seems, that was founded in the 5 Points.
Well, you had a lot of those characters, and I don't mean characters as in like fake people, but I mean literally these are people that you could call characters. Like, what a bunch of characters, right?
Yeah,
you had a lot of them coming over from, immigrating from Ireland, immigrating from Italy and Sicily, coming right through Ellis Island, and finding their way to America and basically being in poverty and having families to either raise or to help out. And
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like 5 points. The 5 points, right? That's basically like where very close to the World Trade Center today, like downtown Manhattan,
Yeah.
Wall Street. I know it was a historically poor neighborhood, but it's just interesting that basically every gang, and this gang specifically, that's found has all of these members that go off and do bigger and better things. It's always in that same one neighborhood, which is insane to me.
5 Points is depicted in Gangs of New York, right? That's where like Leo's character like enters, right?
Yeah,
I think
yes,
so, yeah.
And I know Scorsese did a here's a funny thing. I always say Scorsese, right? My favorite director.
Mine
It's actually
too.
Scorsese. But I've just been saying Sazy so long. So Marty, if you're listening, my apologies, my deepest apologies. But so I'm just gonna refer to him as Marty from now on. Okay, we're not gonna do the last name thing.
But then I think of Marty McFly, so that may.
That's your problem because I think of Martin Scorsese.
But can you imagine if Marty directed Back to the Future?
Double whammy. Double Marty.
That would be an interesting movie.
Maybe Joe Pesci as as Doc.
Joe Pesci. Of course he'd be in it.
What are you over here stuttering, muttering, prick you?
It's the motherfucking Libyans.
Oh God, that they need to make a movie or at least a skit with Joe
Right?
Pesci. That'd be great.
But what I'm saying with Gangs of New York is Scorsese actually took that shot. It's kind of the entrance into that world, into New York.
Love the tracking shot in that.
And
Yeah.
great shot. But he took it. There's a famous, very old photograph, and he basically recreates that photograph in that shot. It's worth looking up.
Oh
Check
yes,
out.
no, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's after like when Amsterdam, he's on his way, and it just shows like the overshot of New York during that time. Is that what you're talking
No,
about?
it's the shot where there's like people basically hanging off like the kind of like porches, fire escapes, and he's walking through
Yes.
that.
Okay. Yeah. I do know the exact picture that you're talking about.
Which a great thing about that movie is they recreated 1800 New York on a set in Rome. That's all. There's no CGI.
That's all in Italy.
That's all and that's why the movie went over budget and over time. And there's a pretty great anecdote about George Lucas visiting the set and looking around, and he says to Marty, you could have done this with CGI, right?
Fuck that.
Are you serious?
Fuck that
No,
guy.
I'm serious.
Oh, that's fucking crazy. So that 5 Points gang, it was founded in the 1890s by Paul Kelly, which is like the least Italian name ever. Which, fun fact about that, he actually changed his name because he was a boxer and he thought that people that knew he was Italian would think he was a pussy because only like Irish people box.
There's no Italian boxers out there?
Not at this time. It's mostly
What about
Irish.
Rocky Marciano, Jake LaMotta?
Not in the 1890s. There was a connotation with Italians and not being able to fight, I guess. And now I feel like that's all they're known as fighters.
I think you would want people to think that about you. Like, oh, this guy's a fucking pussy Italian.
Oh, yeah, I know. Why would you want to think like he's some other Irish guy?
I'd change my name to make it more Italian.
So the reason that this gang created a seed for major players is because they had 5-star recruits. This was like the Alabama football Crimson
Yeah.
Tide of gangs. They recruited Johnny Torrio, Al Capone, Lucky Luciano.
Some serious heavy hitters
It's
there.
like the
Yes.
dream team of mafia.
Yeah.
Of course, the founding fathers of organized crime as we know it.
Right.
Especially
This is the big three.
Well, it's like the 1996
Like, fuck
Olympic
off.
team.
There's a couple more important names in to come, I'm sure.
Fuck
Meyer
off,
Lansky,
LeBron.
you know.
Meyer Lansky, yeah. So this is just a friendly reminder. All major crime bosses came from New York. And in Johnny Torrio and Al Capone's case, they moved to Chicago. Let's jump about 20 years ahead when Prohibition starts and where organized crime gets really fun. So another show that kind of features my new cast of characters is HBO's Boardwalk Empire. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a big fan of this show. And this may be like the second or third time a TV show's ever mentioned of Wicked Hot.
I
know.
think Boardwalk Empire is certainly fitting for what we're discussing now.
Al Capone, Lucky Luciano, Johnny Torrio, Arnold Rothstein, Meyer Lansky, Joe Masseria, prominently featured in the show. So people that haven't seen the show, it's about Atlantic City treasurer Nucky Thompson. Well, the character's name is Nucky Thompson. The real guy's name is Enoch Johnson.
It's Nucky,
So-
Nucky Johnson.
Nucky Johnson.
He even went by Nucky.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as the show is concerned, it's about prohibition. It's, you know, everything that goes through Atlantic City, and I didn't realize how much of a prominent role Atlantic City had within prohibition area, and how I'm sure the show has taken many creative liberties, but this guy basically came in contact with every major hitter, like
Well,
ever.
And Atlantic City is important. And correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they show this in the show, but Atlantic City is where, I mean, it's an important place for organized crime and mafia history because it's where Lucky Luciano held the meeting to establish the commission.
I don't think this happens in the show. I know he talks about the commission. Yeah, so for people who didn't know what the commission was, Luciano basically was like, hey, let's get everybody that isn't Italian in with us. Like basically all criminals just kind of all set aside their fucking racial bullshit or ethnicity bullshit. Irish, Jewish, all of them going in together and basically all making money. And then
Did
they
that
basically
include,
make
like black gangs at all? Like
any
Not until like way later on. you
Yeah.
know?
yeah, it seems like that.
Because I mean, right
a
now
little
the
too
most
progressive for that time.
Yeah.
Well, and also, I don't think it's, you know, and I could be wrong here, but, you know, I've read a lot about like the history of organized crime, and I don't think it's so much as Lucky Luciano being like diplomatic, but it's not like, let's get these people involved. It's, we're going to organize this so we have control over these rackets, and these other people are going to basically
Fall in
pay
line.
street
Yeah.
tax. Yeah, they're going to fall in line and pay street taxes,
Okay.
or they're going to die.
All right. So in the way it's portrayed in the show, at least the I guess the flirting with the idea, is Luciano's explaining this to Al Capone about how every city, every place has the same rules, and we all it's not like he basically made it seem, and again, like you said, it's probably different in history, but in the show, he makes it seem like, hey, I'm not telling you how to run anything, but this isn't me trying to like tell you how to run things. It's more of we're all gonna get money out of this. It's not taking away. I'm not taking away anything from the pot. No one's taking away anything from the pot. It's just
And it's a way to keep it organized because they were going through the Castle Murray.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that.
I think this may have been
Sicilian grandfather might be rolling in his grave. but-
after. So yeah. So as far as like how Luciano kind of existed, he was recruited by Joe Masseria, which was like the boss at the time, and he also worked with Arnold Rothstein alongside his friend Meyer Lansky, who is a Jew. And so during this entire time, Luciano eventually betrays Masseria during the, as Peter was trying to say, is the Castellamarese, right?
Mhm.
War. He ended up siding with mob boss Salvatore Maranzano. And the reason he did this is because Masseria was basically an idiot.
And also, if you're listening, you're more of a, you know, big summer blockbuster fan and maybe don't know the history of this stuff, right? That, you know, Maranzano and Masseria were sort of the leftovers from the Sicilian Black Hand.
yes,
They basically controlled the power, and then they had all these underlings, like basically your modern version of soldiers. And you had these guys like, you know,
wait, so then what was Johnny Torrio? Who was he under?
Johnny Torrio went out to Chicago.
So this was only New York beef.
Yeah, I mean, because it all stemmed from there. You know what I mean? I'm
Right,
sure there
right.
were different kind of gangs in Chicago. Like there was the O'Bannon gang,
Yeah.
which is the ones that ended up getting wiped out in the St. Valentine's
Sound
Day
down.
massacre.
Yep.
But the Sicilian Black Hand, you know, they is like the prototype version of the American Mafia. But you had like one guy who, you know, claimed control. Like it's shown very well in The Godfather Part 2, Don Fanucci.
Yeah.
If you guys are familiar with that, I mean, that's a a pretty perfect portrayal of, you know, that kind of character.
Right.
One person who wields control through intimidation and violence, but, you know, Finucci didn't have anybody under him, and that's how they're able to, you know, take control. And
Right, like when Luciano actually when he betrays Masseria, then I think because when he does that, I think he had the intent of Maranzano told him like, hey, that if we get rid of Masseria, then we're gonna kind of do like that whole thing where there's a bunch of other gangs, we'll put them in together. It'll be more of like a commission rather than me controlling it. But then once Masseria was out of the picture, he was the strongest one, and then he was basically proclaimed himself the Don of Dons.
yeah, boss of all bosses.
Yeah, boss of
Capo
all
di
bosses.
Tutti Capo.
Tutti di capo, yeah. Right? Capo tutti di capo? Yeah.
So. I don't know what I said.
Is it what you said?
I thought so.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
Okay.
We might have our own war after this, man. Let me tell you.
And also Maranzano was obsessed with Roman Empire. And that's why he gets the nickname Little Caesar, in case people don't know him by Maranzano and knew Little Caesar. I don't, you know. So after this all happened, and after the fact that, like, yeah, Maranzano was much more forward thinking than Masseria, he still was very much not the case. He was very much old world, like, no, we don't fuck with anyone else. We're only Italians, and I'm like the king of Italians. And Luciano didn't like that. So he basically said,
if you're Luciano and you have the new school mind and you have your friends are, you know, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel,
yeah, a lot of Jewish guys.
Joe Bonanno, like you have that kind of crew of people. I mean, you're gonna
they're gonna be behind him.
He did what he had to do, you know.
Right. So
to form an organized structure.
Yeah.
He ended up sending federal people, Jewish guys. And apparently isn't the myth is that Bugsy Siegel went to kill him?
Yeah, I believe he might have been one of the gunmen.
Yeah, so they went to his office pretending to be federal agents and then murdered Maranzano. They do this in Boardwalk Empire, and they just stab the shit out of him. And they're disguised as IRS agents, but they fittingly stab the shit out of Caesar. So but yeah, so Al Capone, Johnny Torrio, and we'll jump over to them. Both guys, as far as the timeline of events, played pretty close to history as how it's portrayed in the show. And what happens is Johnny Torrio leaves over to Chicago. He recruits Al Capone to come to Chicago to work for him. Later on, Torrio gets gunned down, survives, but Al Capone takes over, and he builds the Chicago outfit. And then from there, things really became what we know them today, which is, you know, Al Capone, Chicago outfit, St. Valentine's Day massacre, shit like that.
You know, the war between Maranzano and Masseria is captured pretty well, in a very fictionalized way, but in the movie Mobsters, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but that's Christian Slater, Richard Grieco.
Oh, Grieco.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie worth checking out for popcorn entertainment value. But also,
is it not a good
Bronson
movie?
In the Valachi Papers. So Charles Bronson plays Joe Valachi, who was the first big federal informant against the mafia.
That's really cool.
Where
nice.
He's the one that kind of really opened up, I guess, more like middle America to, you know, the fact that there was a commission and, you know, the making ceremony, taking the oath, and kind of what happened with that war and how the commission was formed. A lot of that early information to the public and to law enforcement came from Joe Valachi. So Valachi Papers is definitely like an underrated gangster movie that's worth checking out.
Your knowledge is quite extensive.
Yeah. So when I was in Vegas, I visited the Mafia Museum.
I went there on my one of my last trips to Vegas and was in there 3.5 hours. My friend who was with me was like, "Are you ready to go yet?" I was like, "We still have like 2 or 3 exhibits, man. Like, we're just
there's a lot to read
here, dude."
But yeah, the coolest thing that I saw was the St. Valentine's Day massacre wall. Like you could see all the bullet holes in it.
They have the fucking wall?
Yeah, they have the wall.
It's a brick wall. And then you could see like the bullet marks and holes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. It's very surreal because then it becomes like,
okay, a bunch of people died. Yeah, it's like yeah, you start like, okay, this is getting kind of dark.
All right, true. Quick question for you, Kevin. Better than Titanic experience?
No, I thought Titanic was way better.
Okay.
Titanic what? What are we talking about, Titanic?
So I visited the Titanic exhibit and the Mafia Museum and the Bodies exhibit
And
the Avengers exhibit.
I don't want to say one of my big regrets because I can still do it and I need to do it. It's on my bucket list. But there's a tour in Vegas called the Vegas Mob Tour. And the tour is led by none other than Frank Collada.
I'm not familiar.
Frank was Anthony Spilatro's right-hand man in the Hole in the Wall gang. Anthony Spilatro is portrayed by Joe Pesci in Casino as Nicky Santoro. But he was the enforcer that the Chicago outfit sent out to Vegas to overlook the skim. And Frank takes you on a 5-hour tour and takes you to all the sites of like the glory days of the Vegas mob, like that era.
Really?
And even takes you to places where they like killed people. So it's like a surrealistic
Is
tour.
this a real tour? Or is this
This
just
is a
like
real
some
tour.
Italian guy trying to make a buck?
No,
He's
no.
like, oh,
I mean,
you know that
it's-
grocery store? I killed somebody behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
No
sure
big deal.
It's a bit of both, but that's one thing that somebody used it in a book describing the attention to detail that Scorsese uses in his movies. Because you guys are familiar with the end of Casino, right? Or the House of the Rising Sun montage. Everybody's getting wiped out.
Yep.
Basically, the Chicago mob bosses, the bosses back home, are cleaning up the
Right.
situation.
Right.
And there's a scene where the character is John Nance, and he's the one that's bringing the suitcases of money back to the bosses in Kansas City. He's getting chased through a house and shot. And the actor in the film is Frank.
The guy that gets shot? Or the
No,
guy they
the guy
shoot-
doing the shooting who did the shooting in real life.
That's dark.
Damn.
So that shows you, like, basically, I guess we could say the dark attention to detail is like we're watching the dude
Recreate the murder.
recreate the murder that he did.
That's crazy.
Fucking Jagoff shoots him. The guy's, I mean, it's a very vivid scene.
Well, probably because he explained it vividly, and Scorsese is just like,
Scorsese-
yep.
well,
We'll go with that.
Yeah,
we'll go with that.
We'll have you do it, And that's like kind of mind blowing when you watch that movie,
That's fucking crazy. I got to rewatch that scene just to see what it is to actually watch someone murder someone in real life.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
So I want to get into some mafia movies, and I know I'm going to get shit for this, and I don't want any judges for it.
Okay.
But the first movie I want to talk about is the Godfather series.
And you haven't seen it.
I've never seen it all the way through. I've seen enough bits and pieces to have seen the entire trilogy, but I've never sat down and actually watched every movie all the way through.
Now, do you think anyone is going to give you praise for running half a marathon?
Yes, because they do actually have awards for half marathons.
He got you there.
Lawyered.
Yeah, so Marissa, I think, may have watched the first fucking 10 minutes. She started watching it, and then Peter told her to watch it because she should watch it. So he asked her at what point, what part of the movie did you get? And she's like, oh, the part with the wedding.
It's like, oh, the beginning of the film? Again, no praise. No praise.
I don't know why, but every time I see it on TV, I get bored after like 15 minutes. I honestly get bored.
Kevin, when we're done recording this podcast, I want you to turn off the lights, maybe grab a couple slices of pizza, really set the tone, set the mood, and just sit back and watch The Godfather.
And he'll fall asleep.
I never fall asleep watching movies.
Never.
So
Never
that's-
fallen asleep?
No.
Okay. All right. So Godfather 1. Well, Godfather trilogy? or
Godfather
just the first one?
trilogy. Yeah, the Godfather trilogy. So you guys, as somebody who's never seen the entire trilogy, sell me on why it is considered the best movie. I know that the Godfather Part 2 is considered the best sequel of all time. I disagree with that because I think Terminator 2 is the best.
Agreed.
Some people think Terminator 2, some people think Godfather 2. So sell me on this movie. Like, why should I watch it? Is it historically accurate? I mean, is it something that I should get into? Something that I
feel
should
like
waste
it's
about 10
a
hours worth
loaded-
of my life.
It's a loaded question because I mean the directing, the writing, the acting, the cinematography, the music. So it's really everything about the movie is why you should watch it.
Wait, but Kevin, are you one person that does not like older movies? Like once it gets to a certain age, if you
No.
didn't grow up watching, no, okay.
No, I'm only like that with horror movies. I don't like old horror movies.
Like how old?
Like Exorcist and
Okay.
That's old.
yeah, like 70s, 80s.
It's a bummer, man. You're missing out on so many good films.
No, I've seen a lot of them, but I can't go back like any of the Friday the 13th or Halloween. Or whatever. Halloween's all right. Halloween holds up.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like as far as Godfather, I feel like the memory of it is better than me trying to go and rewatch it. But I've also watched it a couple times and I'm a fan, and it again, from the memory, it holds up, it looks nice. And also there was the Godfather game for PlayStation.
Loved the Godfather game.
So fucking good because you could recreate all of the major points in the movie.
The best is that Marlon Brando was near his death during the making of that game. He allowed them to use his likeness, and he recorded all the dialogue for the character. Apparently, they couldn't use most of it because his voice was so messed up and he was so sick.
Oh,
They
shit.
went into a
Damn.
recording studio and recorded all these like Don Vito Corleone lines.
That's
But
amazing.
Al Pacino would not lend his likeness, so that's why the Michael character is just like
A generic brown
very
man.
generic brown-haired guy. Looks nothing like Al Pacino.
Yeah, I mean, if because when you think that's the other thing, it's like Al Pacino in this is good, and I feel like Al Pacino has become this caricature. Imagine Al Pacino doing the voiceover for the Godfather game. He's just like, "Hoo-ah, I gotta go do this," or
Yeah.
just the ridiculous Al Pacino accent.
I feel like Al Pacino's voice wouldn't. His voice sounds a lot different than it does in The Godfather.
Yeah,
His voice is very like gravelly and low. I don't think it would work.
he's like, okay. He has like that very sarcastic voice. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nowadays, like he used to
Yeah.
be I don't know, serious, I guess. Now he's kind of like a character.
Yeah. But I mean, as far as the question, Godfather, for me, the memory of it is really great. Like I said, I played the game and I watched the movies and it's good. But I can see how people would think it's boring now. Peter,
I
I'm
don't
sure
agree.
is.
I think it's a masterpiece. One of the greatest American films ever made.
There you go.
I mean, especially when you get into The Godfather 2. Now, see, in my household, we grew up watching the chronological version, which, in order for Francis Ford Coppola to raise money for Apocalypse Now, he had a bunch of unused segments for Godfather 1 and Godfather 2, so he edited it together, and they aired it over the course of 3 nights on NBC, and it was like a big deal when it went down. It was 77. It was Godfather, a novel for TV.
Okay.
And, years later, they released edited versions of those on VHS and Laserdisc. And, that's the version we had in my house and that we grew up watching. So it starts off with the young Don Vito stuff, the Robert De Niro stuff from Godfather 2.
So it was like a supercut.
Yeah.
It was like the Quentin Tarantino, Kill Bill 1, 2.
Yeah,
supercut.
a chronological cut.
Interesting.
So, The Godfather 2, one of the things that makes The Godfather 2 so great is it's the rise of the father and fall of the son. We're watching Don Vito's basically become a victim of circumstance. He's trying to make an honest way and keeps getting railroaded, and then sort of takes matters into his own hands to, let's say, pursue the American dream.
Right.
There's that beautiful shot of Don Vito as a kid coming in to Ellis Island, and then all the people are walking towards on the boat, and then you see the Statue of Liberty, and it's just it's a beautiful shot.
So it's like eye porn.
Yeah. I basically picture what my both sets of my great grandparents would have saw when they were coming in from Sicily or coming in from Ireland. It's something that resonates every time I watch it. But you're watching the rise of the father and fall of the son, and it's cut together very well. And The Godfather 2 should not really be a great movie. It feels like it would be a very rushed movie. I mean, Godfather 1 came out, Francis made The Conversation, and then made The Godfather Part 2. And The Godfather Part 2, it feels like it shouldn't work, and it works. And apparently, there's historians out there who write about it that he had a 6-hour cut of The Godfather 2 and showed it to George Lucas, and George Lucas was like, again, Lucas with like the kind of
he's like, what make this better? CGI.
Yeah, one-liner day ruiners to these fucking auteurs of cinema was, you have 2 movies here. You should scrap one and go with the other. And
that's a really easy thing to say, though. It's like, oh, you have a 6-hour movie? Yeah, cut it in half. Make 2 movies. That's what they do nowadays.
But apparently that's how
George Lucas was onto something. He's literally the master of franchising and milking everything out of things.
Yeah. But, so that's why they structured the back and forth between, the Robert De Niro stuff as Don Vito in Little Italy, dealing with Finucci, kind of forming the Corleone crime family. And then you have the fall, and not the career fall, because by the end of The Godfather 2, Michael Corleone essentially is the most powerful mobster or criminal, like at least in the United States.
Right.
But I mean, he sells his soul.
See, when you explain it, it sounds way cooler. But
yeah, and I'm a sucker for behind the scenes gossip and news, because I love that shit. So if you got any more of that, I think you've sold me on that alone with just the behind the scenes stuff, the George Lucas stuff.
I will say, though, you also seem to have a kind of like a connection with the movie, because like you said, it's something that you would think your mom, I mean, your maternal and paternal side would see when they're coming into America. Kevin is a nativist. He was born in he's basically Bill the Butcher. Like, that's his ancestors.
Yep.
Intense.
Yeah.
I'm as white gets.
Yeah.
But
today I die a true American.
I will say, I feel like The Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 probably end on 2 of the best shots in cinema. In fact, my lock screen currently is Michael Corleone at the end of Godfather Part 2.
Let me see.
Okay, let me take it out.
Because I can't remember at all. Oh, yeah.
He's sitting by himself, essentially contemplating the decisions he's made and why he's ended up alone.
All right, so the next movie I want to talk about is kind of like The Godfather is for you, Peter. It's Goodfellas. And
Goodfellas is probably my favorite film, so I could talk about this
all night. It's mine. It's mine too. So I saw this when I was like 6 years old. And
same here.
In like 93.
Watched a bootleg copy from the video store.
Yeah, we rented it from Blockbuster.
My parents dubbed that shit. I hope the FBI is not listening. Well, no, I didn't sell it.
What do you mean they dubbed it? What do you mean?
We had 2 VCRs. You throw the rental copy in, you throw in a blank tape, and you make your own copy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
So the first time I watched Goodfellas as a 6-year-old kid, I was probably 7 years old at that point. It was probably 91 when it came out on video. I watched it, but when you used to dub tapes, a lot of those tapes had this like built-in sensor thing where it would do a weird color change and lines would go down the screen. So my first viewing
when you tried to like bootleg a
when you try to copy
video, that's like the protection.
Yeah.
It's like when you try to steal a pair of pants with the little thing and you try to remove it and then it's just ink all over your jeans.
Yeah.
Like, fuck it.
Exactly.
Now, Kevin, have you ever seen Goodfellas on the big screen?
No, I haven't. There's not many theaters here in Arizona that play old movies, which is very disappointing to me.
I caught it, the Regal Fenway, when I first moved to Boston, did like a throwback series where they would show, like every Wednesday over the course of a couple months, they would show like a classic movie. And I caught Goodfellas then. My first time seeing it on the big screen was special because we were out in Los Angeles. I had an amazing college school field trip my final semester. I was taking these special classes that were geared towards like movie production and producing movies. It was a 4-student trip that we took, and we went to visit like the heads of studios. We were there Oscar week. We went to like symposiums, the Kodak Theater, and we watched Goodfellas with the cinematographer. And that was just like a treat because he started throwing in like the behind the scenes anecdotes that you never read in the books and stuff. That
I love that shit.
Very, very.
I would love
Like-
to hear that for this movie.
Yeah. Okay. Can we dive into that?
Well, one of the things he says, people were asking him questions like, "What was it like making the movie?" And I remember him saying something along the lines of that it was actually not a fun movie to make because Marty sort of staffed the set with actual legit gangsters and mobsters and people that knew the main characters.
Jeez.
So he's like, I mean, the violence in the movie, it's a very like a hard movie to make because of the content. And never
you're making
thinking-
it's all fucking real too. You're like,
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to my Casino comment of having Frank Collada
Yeah.
do the murder that he actually did in real life. That there's dudes that knew Jimmy Burke and knew Tommy DeSimone and Paul Vario, and people that knew Henry Hill, and that there were like essentially knockaround guys that were around all the time while they were making that movie.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's like, but like, what it was based on a book, right?
Yeah, it's based on the book Wise Guy by Nick Pileggi.
Right. So, I mean, it's like having the author there to like verify. It's like having the author and then the base
Yeah.
subject there to verify that the way this is made is legit, which makes sense. Now that makes complete sense because, I mean, that probably is my number one most rewatchable and top movie.
that's
It's a movie,
that's
if it
an older
comes- if it
movie I
comes on
never get
TV,
sick of.
Same.
If it comes on TV or if I have a friend over and we're talking about it, I bring it up and they're like, I've never seen Goodfellas. I literally stop what we're doing. I put it on. I'm like, this is what we're doing for the next 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Right.
I do remember, this is an interesting anecdote. I picked up a piece of dialogue that I'd never heard before. And I probably even to this day, have watched Goodfellas the most on VHS. I've been lucky enough to see it in the theater now 4 or 5 times.
Shit.
But during the Billy Bat scene, after Joe Pesci storms out, he turns to his like crew of dudes, like the 2 dudes that are with him, and says, "I used to fuck kids like that in the ass in the can." And I had never picked up on that line before that moment. And was sitting in the theater with all these Hollywood type people, and we're just like, "The fuck? Did he just say what I think he just said?" It was just a revelation moment for that being my favorite film. We'll throw out along with Phantasm, but that's another podcast.
That's crazy.
But,
that's why I love seeing movies in theaters, and unfortunately, I don't get to see older movies that often. As you pick up on the little nuances that you don't get when you're watching it on Blu-ray with the house full of noises and shit. Like you miss that.
Yeah.
Those little things that make the movie so special. So I want to kind of change gears here. So we're doing not necessarily a mafia themed episode, but organized crime. So I want to switch gears and talk about a different type of organized crime with Sons of Anarchy. Because you have, the mafia stuff, which everyone knows, and then you have the motorcycle club, which are completely different, but still kind of the same type of way they do things and the way they run things. So, first of all, have you guys all seen
I've
of Anarchy?
seen Sons of Anarchy. I am a fan. I mean, we've discussed this minus the last season, which was trash. Just
Trash. Yes.
complete garbage.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to the Mayans, the spinoff show.
Yes, Mayans.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping that it can actually gain some ground because there's not a white person leading it.
What's the who's the writer for the show? I forget his name.
Kurt
Kurt.
Sutter.
Yeah, so he's basically been on a downslope since the last season of Sons of Anarchy because he
Yeah.
had come
What
out
was
with that
that show?
show Bastard Executioner
Oh,
on
okay,
FX, which
That didn't
lasted
last.
only. Did he even make it a season? I don't know if
I
they
think, I
just.
think it was just one season. Yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't get a lot of hype at all.
I never watched it, so I can't offer any opinions.
I
on
have
it.
not seen it either, but
I feel like it looked cool.
it looked
I
cool,
mean,
but
the
I heard it
previews
was
looking cool.
wicked boring. So
Damn.
yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Sons of Anarchy. I like the modern like crime and that it's just a bunch of like white trash guys and
Yeah.
bumfuck nowhere California.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I mean, from going to like 30s and 40s and up to like Goodfellas time, like 70s, 80s, stuff like that. Modern day it's dirty. It's less glamorous.
Yeah,
It's
a
very
lot of
much,
drugs, a lot of
Yeah.
horrible drugs, not just weed and coke and stuff, but like meth and heroin and
Yeah.
shit. Yeah.
and the people that are dealing this they're dabbling in the dark arts. So there's not like a front where everyone's nice and stuff. It's just kind of like everyone who's in this, we all know each other, but anyone outside of it, unless they're like I guess in this case, like as far as gangs are concerned, like a political ally, like we don't fuck with them.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And it's very much like a racial divide thing. And even like it's a club, right? It's they're in a club and it's no one else is allowed.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of like you have to be Italian to be in the Italian mafia. It's kind of like you have to be white to be in like the Sons of Anarchy. You have to be Mexican to be in the Mayans. Like that's how they kind of segregate themselves without being like legitimate family or
Yeah, because I remember what was their like friend motorcycle club with the like it was I was always convinced it was just 3 black guys that were in this club because that's all they would show is just those 3.
The same 3 guys.
Yeah, it was
same
like
3
it
guys.
was the
And they wanted to patch them in, but
Forget the name.
they couldn't.
the Grim Bastards.
I watched season 1 and 2 kind of sparingly over the course of like a month or two, and then during the big snowstorms of 2015, where I was like out of work for like a week and a half, I tore through season 3 up until the last episode in like a week and a half.
That's the one in Belfast, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was a weak season.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the IRA stuff was I was just like, all right.
It's like
I just wanted to hear that guy say "clit" a million times. Although Ron Perlman was what got me into that show. So
Did Ron Perlman turn you on?
Ron Perlman turned me on to that show because I mean I think that was like he hadn't really done much after like Hellboy, and then I was like, oh shit, Ron Perlman, yeah, I saw this show.
Ron
was like,
Perlman,
fucking-
and this fits into the gangster genre, but he's a great gangster in the film Drive.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the movie, but he is. Good
I
in
hate
it.
the movie, but yeah.
Yeah, that movie's. Yeah, I'm not. You like? Are you a fan of that movie? I keep like looking at you.
I'm a big fan of that movie.
Yeah,
I couldn't get into it.
I couldn't get into it either.
Have you guys watched it more than once?
I've
Yes.
only watched it once, but I think it was
Twice.
marketed as something that it didn't. It wasn't what it was.
100% agree with that. It was a market as like an action gangster movie.
Yes,
With-
like a
with
driver, like transporter type movie.
Yeah, the stunts, the driving stunts, I know were all legit. There was no CGI involved with that, so that I appreciate. But yeah, aside from that, I mean, the movie itself is not good.
Okay, the last movie I want to talk about is again, it's a movie that I can rewatch pretty much every day. And I know we're talking a lot of Martin Scorsese, but it's The Departed, and I fucking love that movie. It's like my 1A to Goodfellas being 1B.
Yeah, we've talked about this. That's another movie that if it's on, I'm like, well, guess I'm staying up for
About a month,
2.5
ago,
hours.
My friend was over at my house, and I saw that they added it to Netflix. And I said, "All right, let me just put this on. I want to watch the beginning. 'Cause I
yes,
feel
just
that
add
it
it
has
now.
one of the best intros to any movie ever."
Yeah, I agree
yes.
100% with that.
Yeah. In our intro episode, I said it was the best Martin Scorsese for what it does.
I
The
have to give
impact.
that serious thought, because I mean, if we're even just Martin Scorsese gangster films, I mean, Goodfellas has an insanely powerful opening, and if you put yourself in like a theater goer in 1990 watching where they open the trunk, Joe Pesci just saying "Die, you fucking piece of shit," and you hear the knife going in and out. And then De Niro just walks up and unleashes a revolver into him, and then just freeze frame
The freeze frame.
on Henry Hill. You know,
It is good, but I've said this before, the Jack Nicholson monologue with the interlaced
be a product of my environment.
Yeah.
My environment
Yeah.
is a product of me.
the interlaced events of Boston is great.
Years ago, we had the church.
Yeah.
It's our way of saying we had each other. 20 years, Irishmen couldn't get a fucking cup of coffee. We had the presidency. May God rest his soul.
I've never met
That-
anybody
you know-
that knows lines like John does, and that just blew him out of the water.
Yeah.
I keep going, but it's a little inappropriate for the podcast.
Yeah. Because the N word is dropped like right after that.
But just the fact that Scorsese using "Gimme Shelter" for the third time, and that slow panning shot of Jack Nicholson walking across what we're supposed to believe is just like a South Boston auto garage. There's just something about it cut against the stock footage
the
of
silhouette.
like the bus riots in
Yeah.
Southie.
The
where the
Jack
guy says to
Nicholson
put paint in your
silhouette
heart.
is great before he's even revealed, and then the way that it's so well lit when he gets into the convenience store, and he always has a shadow over him, basically the entire beginning until he
same DP and cinematographer as Goodfellas.
okay, makes sense.
I don't know how to say his last name. That's why I didn't say it. Goodfellas, like Michael Bajas. But he passed away last year, unfortunately.
Oh, that sucks.
But yeah, I mean, talented.
Yeah, and then the end shot, the
I-
X's, the Scorsese ode to St. Valentine's Day Massacre. The only reason I know this is because I had a film class in high school that
Some Howard Hughes throwback stuff there, right?
Yeah. So in the last shot when Matt Damon has his groceries and he's walking in the hallway, the carpet has X's. And in the beginning of St. Valentine's Day Massacre, the Howard Hughes movie, they show X's and then it pans down to all, the Albanians getting gunned down by Al Capone's gang. Actually, it wasn't St. Valentine's Day Massacre. It was the beginning of Scarface, where it shows everyone get killed.
The original Scarface, right?
Yeah, not the Say Hello to My Little Friend Scarface.
Oh, okay.
The Howard Hughes 1932 Scarface movie, which interestingly enough, a little fun fact about that, the movie came out during the Hays Code in cinema. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Hays Code, but basically it was something because criminal violence was getting so out of control with John Dillinger and like, in the Midwest with people robbing banks, and then obviously with organized crime in Chicago and in New York. The Hays Code made it that any gang member that was featured in a movie had to die by the police at the end of the movie.
Wow.
And in the 1932 Scarface movie, Scarface is killed by the cops after a car chase. And by the way, they made it so that it's not like solemn. It's just like, all right, he got what he deserved. Like the cops won. The cops are good.
Okay.
Speaking of Brian De Palma, let's talk about The Untouchables, because I feel like it's a movie that gets hate and it really shouldn't. Besides Robert De Niro's performance as Al Pacino, not a fan of that.
You mean as Al Capone?
As Al Capone.
'Cause, I mean, I would definitely
As Al
pay
Pacino,
the
as
price
Al
of
Capone.
admission to see De Niro play Pacino. Vice versa, really, but still. No,
Um,
I mean, how could you hate that baseball bat scene? I mean,
The baseball bat scene is good, but the over. Have you seen it, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, the over the top Al Capone stuff where he's like, "I want him dead. I want his family. I want kill." Like the he's very much
I
Dick
take it as,
Tracy
like,
villain.
like over the
Yeah.
top, almost.
I get the
He kinda does
stylized.
Capone in like a more of a cartoonish way, a comicish way.
I feel like that's how kind of the movie is, very stylized 30s, which I'm fine with. I like the way it looks. Some of the characters though are a little, because like I don't know, I feel like Elliot Ness and even Sean Connery's character Frank Malone, they're cartoonish, but not so much. Al Capone's just Robert De Niro's Al Capone is just very much like on the tippy top of outlandishness.
How about the fucking shootout at the end of the train station? Beautiful.
Oh, yeah, well, that's an amazing shot. All right, so I guess we'll get into tropes. There are two that I have that they're in every fucking movie and it's the car always explodes. Every car that someone gets in, and it's like they'll get in the car and it's focused way too much on the car, and then the key turns, and it explodes. And it's gone into like spy movies and gone into like other type movies where just someone gets in a car, just sitting in the car, it explodes, turning the key, it explodes. How many car bombings were there really in mafia stuff?
There couldn't have been that many. There couldn't have been that many. And I know it's gotten to the point where when I'm watching like a mafia movie, I'm always like, where's the car that's going to blow up? Like I'm fucking looking for every scene. I'm like, that car's going to blow up. That car's going to blow up. I'm always thinking about that. It's in the back of my mind when I
It's
see
interesting though, because out in Cleveland, that was a big way to kill people. I don't know if you guys have seen Kill the Irishman.
No, I haven't.
It's about Danny Green, who was an Irish mobster who the Italians out in the Midwest had tried to kill a number of times and were unsuccessful, and then finally got him with a car bomb. But that family, from my knowledge, and I have less knowledge on that stuff.
Irish car bomb? Is that from that?
I don't believe so.
Oh, all right.
It's probably IRA shit.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, and then the next one also deals with cars. And I know this is just a design for cars back in the 1930s, but it's almost like the designers of cars in the 30s were like, we need a big enough platform for people to just stand on this while the car is moving to fire Tommy guns or bars that are fucking 45 ACP rounds.
And shout out to all the people that did that back in the day, because
did they actually do that?
How hard would it be to fire a Tommy gun while like riding on one of those big Buicks?
Firing a Tommy gun in general is a difficult thing. And yeah, standing on a car. I mean, how fast do you think those cars went back then? Maybe like 45?
Yeah, 50 max. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Thoughts on the 30s cars?
Sexy.
Very sexy. I love seeing a drive by in a 30s car.
That's true. But you
Tommy
have like
gun
the
and a guy
drive-bys
with a fucking top hat. Yeah, I love seeing.
But you have the top. But you have the guys that show up in the car and then they open the suicide doors and then they shoot. But then you have the guys that just ride on the car.
Dude, if I'm a mobster, I'm checking my car every morning for bugging devices, tracking devices, car bomb shit. And I'm getting bulletproof glass. I'm getting bulletproof siding on the car.
Yeah, but this is not people they're like drive-bying in a 1930s car. There's no.
Yeah, but I'm saying right now, I'm bringing it to modern day. I'm bringing it to 2018.
Are you saying you want to start seeing like the Bloods and the Crips using like 1930s cars for drive-bys?
If I'm legit, like, if that's my profession, like, I'm preparing myself and protecting myself.
I will answer that question and say yes. I want to see that. I mean,
it's just like some CCTV footage of like a 1930s car and like a bunch of Crips hanging off of it shooting
with Uzis. It's funny because my mom had like this SUV truck and it had pretty large foot. I don't know. They call it like mud, not mud flaps. They're like foot
Nerf bars. The bars that you step on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would always think of like, man, if I could just ride on this, going like 20 miles per hour down the neighborhood.
That's how the SWAT team does it. They have the Suburban fitted with like the handle rails on it, and they all just kind of hang out the outside. Yeah,
that's a cool look. I think it's a cool look. Like if I'm doing a drive-by, I mean, yeah. If I'm doing a drive-by, I mean, it's not practical because I mean, you're just like, why is that guy standing on those footboards? Clearly he's gonna shoot some shit up. It's whereas if you like roll up and then open the doors and start shooting, less conspicuous.
Yeah. So my first trope is the one that you see like in Sopranos. You see it a lot recently, where the guy shoots somebody and then immediately drops the gun and walks away. So The answer to this is kind of common sense, but I wanted to learn a little bit about the backstory about it. So they actually did do this in the 20s, 30s, 40s. Like they would
Leave the evidence?
So they didn't want to get caught fleeing the scene with a gun. So they would, if it was small enough and untraceable, they would just drop it. Nowadays, they do it because gunshot residue. So in The Sopranos, I know they just drop the gun and walk away. But normally, like in real life situations, they drop the gun and take their clothes off, like their overcoat or whatever they're wearing, so they can't be found with gunshot residue on them.
Right.
So that's actually the main reason, like in Sopranos, that they drop the gun.
And I think more famously, The Godfather, where Michael Corleone, when he shoots Sollozzo and the captain.
But he has a tape on it.
Well, it's taped up to the toilet so he can that's where it's hidden. But then he grabs it and comes out, and he's instructed by Clemenza, you drop the gun and you walk away.
But how do you not leave fingerprints is really the question.
I don't think there is so much concern about fingerprints as being caught with the gun.
Yeah, and that was the main reason from the obviously the time before fingerprints and DNA was that you just didn't want to be caught leaving an area with a gun.
Right.
Especially
after
one with
someone
the serial scratched off of it.
That's true.
My next one is one that you actually brought up, and it's the cop dips his finger in the drugs and tastes it. So I went back to try and find anything I could to see if this is real, and I actually found a few articles about this exact thing. And sadly, no, it's not real. No cop does this unless you're like some fucked up cop.
Yeah, because if you see it, like you're
some bad lieutenant shit going on.
Yeah. This started coming around because of the movies in the 70s and 80s. It featured that. So they found a cop from the 70s and said, like, why was this a thing? And he said some cops were addicted to heroin or painkillers at the time, and they would dip their fingers into it thinking it was like fentanyl, laced with fentanyl or something to get high.
Like, what do you mean? Their whole... You said fingers, so they're just like
no,
five
like
fingers
their finger, like one finger.
Oh, okay.
Taste. Yeah,
1 finger, 2 finger, 3 finger.
Yeah.
I didn't quite get it this time.
So a lot of coke or heroin back then was laced, so that's why people started trying it, and it just transferred over to cops doing it. So no, cops never actually did that.
I see.
And it's also against protocol.
If you're a police officer and you see that, your first instinct isn't like, I need to make sure that's cocaine or drugs, and just do a little.
My favorite shot of that is Goodfellas when he gets arrested at the end, and he goes, "Hey, look, all the fucking pals are here. Well, we got anything good there? We baking a cake? We baking a fucking cake? We got something good there?" And the one guy dips the pinky in, puts it on his tongue, and smiles and nods his head. And they go, "Bye, dickhead.
Yeah,
see you in Attica, dick."
Yeah, and he did that at the station. It wasn't even.
Mm-hmm.
My next one is fell off the back of a truck. The saying, "It fell off the back of a truck." I wanted to know.
That's very true.
Yeah, what the origins of this was. So, the phrase lies with salvaged auctions back in the day. And what they would do is take stuff that was like dented or boxes were messed up, and they would sell them at a salvaged auction. And then whoever bought them would in turn sell them for a profit. So they started to get wise, and people would start deliberately pushing stuff off the back of a truck to dent it and all that stuff. So that's where the term fell off the back of a truck. And then they realized, well, we could just take it and say it fell off the back of a truck.
Right.
So it kind of evolved into...
Did they damage it, or it was just like...
No, at that point, they were just like taking it and saying it fell off, and then like collecting the insurance money or whatever was available.
Interesting.
For them. Yep.
Yeah, because what in what context is that really used? Like, what do they acquire that's...
Well, it's usually used like when you're giving somebody a gift, or like you have something and they're like, "Hey, where'd you get this?" And they're like, "Oh, it just fell off the back of a truck." Like, basically saying like, I obtained it illegally, and this is all you need to know.
By the way, John is going to be looking up, after we're done recording this podcast, he's going to be looking up what trucks ship these Funko Pop toys, these custom action figures. Where are these?
And they fell back on the back of all of those.
Yeah.
All of those trucks. Yeah.
Yeah, fell off the truck.
My last trope is cement shoes, where a gangster fills a bucket or whatever with cement, sticks their feet in there, and dumps them into a river, lake, ocean.
It seems effective, though.
That's a real thing.
It does seem effective, and it was actually used somewhat often in the 20s and 30s, and basically before there was like DNA forensics.
I think it got
stuff.
used recently in a Brooklyn mob homicide.
Cement
It
shoes.
may have.
Yeah.
The where it actually stems from is the Freemasons in the 17 and 1800s, where they would actually use that method to kill oath breakers. So that's where the trope.
So
stem
basically, I was wrong. The Freemasons were the first.
from. They were the
legit
first gang. Yeah.
They were here before you, John, and they'll be here after.
They were there with their fucking what do they call those things? Compass.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they?
Yeah.
Doing math to like show me your special Freemason compass. They put the compass up to their eye. That's how you know you're a Freemason. Okay, so I guess my last question, and we'll put it to everybody, is, and this was the first one that's like not multiple choice. It would be, who would be your ultimate heist team? So we know there's the Lufthansa heist in Goodfellas. There's the town. There's the fucking the Public Enemies. It's not a good movie, but it's about bank robbers, 1930s, and those guys are gangsters. Come up with your heist team: a leader, enforcer, bagman, driver, and a lookout.
I'm going to preface this by saying it doesn't have to be a heist movie character.
Right. It's just a heist team. Who would be in it?
Right.
Right. All right. You know, Peter, since you're the guest, why don't you go first?
Okay, my leader would be Neil McCauley, which is Robert De Niro's character in Heat.
Okay, that's a good choice.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
My enforcer is Nicky Santoro from Casino, Joe Pesci's character.
Okay.
That's a very good choice as well.
My bagman is Danny Green from Kill the Irishman.
Okay. I've never seen.
I haven't
this
either.
movie.
You guys should. It's on Netflix. Watch it.
Is that the one with Christopher Walken?
Yes.
Okay. Sweet. I'm into it.
Now you guys are going to be very upset at this one, but my driver is the driver from Drive. Just sit on that for a moment.
Okay. That's a good pick. Bad movie, good pick.
Yeah. Bad movie, good pick. I mean, you lost me on Drive, honestly. I know he's a good driver.
Don't worry,
but,
I'll be able to dismantle your list.
Okay. All right. Kevin, so we have our reasons. What's your team? Why?
Okay, my leader is Danny Ocean. Fucking mastermind genius heist master.
It's true.
My enforcer, Honey Bunny from Pulp Fiction. She's brutal
That
as
is
fuck in
a
that movie.
yeah. She is.
I'll execute every motherfucking last one of you.
Yes, and my bagman. Okay, so I think I need to explain this a little bit. My bagman is Hermione Granger from Harry Potter. And I chose
you lost
this.
me, bro.
I chose this because
You lost me.
not only does she have a bag with an infinite bottom, but she's also loyal and like not willing to cut corners when it comes to planning.
Look,
shit.
Kevin, I'm going to stop you dead in your tracks. I thought this was a gangster film genre podcast episode.
Oh no, I
We're going
specified
anybody,
we
then
are.
fucking Freddy Krueger is going to be my enforcer. Like, come on. Well, why is Freddy Krueger going to be your enforcer? Because he'll kill you in your dreams. Sleep.
Also, not to derail your thing, but yes, she has an infinite bag, but the bank has a finite amount of money at it.
Right,
It's not
but
like she's
she's
gonna-
also a wizard who can sneak in. And she's a wizard, so she can back up the enforcer when she's got to. My driver is Frank Martin, Transporter.
All right, great choice.
That's still I can
Great choice.
And my lookout is Colin Sullivan from The Departed. Matt Damon.
Okay.
Mainly because he's a cop and he looks inconspicuous. So he can easily look out. He's a cop. So John, what about you?
So my leader, and I always forget his name, but I remembered it now. And
Sonny.
it's Sonny. Chaz Palmentieri.
For the people listening, I'm looking at the list, so I was kind of cheating there.
He's looking at the list, which is why he was also defacing my enforcer, which is Tommy DeVito from Goodfellas.
He's a
And
homicidal maniac. He's a loose cannon. He's a cowboy. He's got too much to prove. I only use them for certain things.
either way, he was part of the Lufthansa heist. And if things go awry, he'll just go kill you like he did with Stax.
Yeah, I feel
but
like
he also killed Spider. That's why I wouldn't choose Tommy as an enforcer. I mean, he is an enforcer, but he's a loose cannon.
When he kills Spider, it's because he's in a different scenario. I feel like when he's going to rob something,
when he's
and
on the
it's to make
job,
money.
it's all business.
Right.
Yeah, but what if you're on a job and a made guy? I mean, we run into a Billy Bats situation there. I mean, that's one of the things that ultimately does him in.
Well, that could happen with any one of the enforcers.
Right. I mean, come on. It could have happened to Nicky Santoro.
But Nicky Santoro's a made guy. Tommy wasn't.
It's true.
Honey Bunny.
It was amongst the Italians.
Okay, can we just go on a side tangent? Best Joe Pesci character, real quick. Are you going, Nicky?
Harry from Home Alone.
Oh,
I prefer Nicky because I like the dialogue more in Casino.
Okay.
Being serious, I think Goodfellas. Because like Peter said, he's a loose cannon. He's entertaining to watch. He pulls it off really well.
He is. Yeah, I know it's difficult because I think he's like probably the best part of Casino, honestly. Whereas Goodfellas,
holes in the desert.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then my bagman, I have Mr. Pink, and the reason I have Mr. Pink is he runs like a motherfucker with that bag. He gets hit by a car, picks the bag back up, and gets to where he needs to be despite all that shit going completely sideways.
He's definitely a team player.
From Reservoir Dogs, by the way.
Yeah, and he gets the diamonds.
And he gets the diamonds. Yeah. And then my driver, I have Nikolai, which is Viggo Mortensen's character in Eastern Promises, because that's just his job. He's the driver.
The reason I wouldn't have Nikolai as a driver is because he's a fucking cop.
It's true.
Who would you want to cop around on your fucking squad, dude?
Pre-cop.
If you're saying pre-cop, like if we believing that he's like a Russian
mob dude.
then
Yeah. And then for my lookout, I'm just gonna go with a random character here and go Mr. French from The Departed. Only because he's the guy. He's
biggest badass in that whole film.
He is.
Yeah, he's a good number 2 as well.
To everyone that stuck around, thanks again for listening. If you happen to be listening to the iTunes version, we also have a couple other places where podcasts can be found, such as Google Play, Stitcher, and also we have a YouTube version as well. And to keep up on all your Wicked Hot news, give the show a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Wicked Hot Talk. And we want to thank Peter for coming on.
Yes, thanks you.
And spewing your knowledge. I mean,
that was a huge knowledge drop for me.
Yeah. Like you have so many things, so I appreciate you coming by.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you, and I look forward to doing it again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, we will catch you again. It is a bi-weekly show now, so we will catch you in 2 weeks on the next episode of Wicked Hot.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.